welcome to the first presentation of this evening titled Managing Focus in React. There are two reasons why I chose this title. The first one is because React was developed to enable developers to quickly develop interactive web applications. Its purpose isn't to create an opinionated way on how to program, but to let developers write what they are comfortable with and build their own tools on top of React. That's why we see a great amount of tools available to us on NPM, and that's why it's more important than ever to use what will accomplish the task at hand and also not waste time with learning something that might be outdated in the next day. The second reason is because even today online forums, well, are not that great as they could be, and we all could do a bit better job if we manage the focus of the users on the various input elements. So this is our agenda. First, we will take a quick look into the following technologies: TypeScript, Zustand, Tailwind CSS, and Shed CN UI. And afterwards, we will explore a code base for a simple feedback form where we will spotlight the uses of useRef hook together with controlling the focus and the tab index property. So let's jump into it. So what is TypeScript? How many of you know TypeScript? Please show your hands. That's amazing. How many of you actively use TypeScript in everyday projects? Great, so I don't really need to explain what TypeScript is, but it's a statically typed superset of JavaScript. It greatly enhances our experience by catching errors in our code bases early on with static types, and also improves the readability and maintainability with auto-completion. So the following code on the left side is without TypeScript, on the right side is with TypeScript. These small type annotations on the props allow us to catch errors like the user object is in a wrong format because it's missing the name, because it's structured with first name, last name, such a classic error, or catch a missing property in case we forget one. Another technology that I like to use is Zustand, because it's a minimalistic state management solution for React that uses hooks to create a central store for state management in an intuitive and unopinionated manner. The great thing about it is that it's easy to use. It requires very little code to actually set up your global state management for you. Now, this would be a typical application structure for an online store, or probably an online store, where you would have a cart in header component, which would want to show, well, at least the sum of the items within your cart. You would also want to update the cart with some feature product components within the tiles. So you cannot really save it in a useState hook somewhere. Otherwise, you would get stuck in the propagation of properties. Good. This is an example how you would write it with a React context. And on the right side, we see a Zustand store, which you can see is just this small little piece. And then we don't need to pollute our main app component with a store context provider, and also other advantages, which we will see. Good. The next technology that I like to use is Tailwind CSS. Now, this is something which is a matter of opinion. However, I was also skeptical at first, but then I tried it and it simply works. It's just so much faster to develop with it. And how many of you people know Tailwind CSS?
Unfortunately.
Great. So most of you guys know it. And it's a utility-first CSS framework which allows us to style components by using the class name property instead of having inline styles or some style sheet management solutions. This would be the example of a styled div where we would have some sort of a theme provider, and then an inline style of, yeah, I don't know how many lines. Now, when we are using Tailwind, it's enough for us to just simply use, yeah, these classes here to achieve the effect on the left. It also, yeah, allows responsive design by using prefixes, and we can achieve actually a uniform look with theming. So the primary colors are not some, not littered across our components and hard-coded in ways that probably most of you guys have done a lot in the past. So one next technology that caught the attention of my eye, even though I have not used it in production, is ShadCN UI. How many of you guys have heard about ShadCN UI? Oh, great. So at least I can show you something new today. I'm very happy about that. And ShadCN UI is a lightweight and modular component library designed for building fast and scalable user interfaces. Yeah, it enables rapid prototyping. It has a minimalistic design, and you can very easily have a very clean and lightweight structure in the code. We will see later yeah, what it can do. This would be an example on the left if we would want to create our own input fields. And this is actually a very good base on how to extend our input component. As you can see, there is a lot going on. There is the forwarding of the ref object. There is the extending of the class name property here. Yeah, and also the definition of the type, which nothing going on there. And one very important thing as well is the display name. So if we check it out within our developer tools, we actually see the proper names of the component instead of just some random anonymous. Good, this would be after. So if you just type into your CLI npx ShadCN UI add input, it will add this one to your code base, and you are in full charge of this component, and you can modify it, bring your own styles and behaviors in it. Alrighty, so let's see some code. This is a link to the GitHub repository of the code that we will be exploring today. So feel free to grab it, or I will also show it in the end of the presentation. And yeah, now we can actually check out the code base. All right, so I've written some Git utilities which will allow us to traverse the commit history. So first of all, we will get to 13 commits behind. And there are two things which we need to do in order to kickstart a repository like this. So the first one would be to create a new project using the Vite npm creator. This is the new way on doing create React app. How many of you guys know create React app? Yeah, great. So if you already know that, this is the way how to create it with Vite. How many of you guys do know Vite? Perfect, amazing. And so you're probably familiar also with the templates. So if you want to use a tech stack nowadays, it's best to first check whether some reasonable preset is already configured for you. You will save yourself the hassle of installing every single library by hand, and you can just pick the stack that fits your needs the best. So we have done only a simple React TypeScript Vite template starter in our code base. And then the second step would be to configure ShadCN UI. It has an installation guide, which is pretty straightforward. Yeah, so we just make some edits to existing code bases, and the important thing is to configure our component JSON. You can also use the default ones with one exception on the global CSS file, which is for us in the source index, and we are not using React server components because, yeah, that would be a whole other presentation going on. All right. I think we should be good to go. So in this way, we can also no. Okay. Just a small second so that I can take you to the build. All right, and now this small utility will help me to stage the contents of the next commit. Good. So what we've done in the first commit is that we have replaced the default state with a feedback form component, and we have created a Zustand store in a very easy way. You just import the creator function from Zustand, and then you create the store using this notation. If you are using TypeScript, which probably most of us are all the time, then you need to add one more call to it so that it can resolve the types properly. And you just simply insert your initial state, no hassle here. And yeah, this is our default feedback form. It just contains two texts with some Tailwind styling. I will also showcase the styling here. So first, I will just sit, be easier. So we have two texts. The first one would be like a header title. We don't need to worry about that too much. And we would want to make this text bigger. So we just write a text for XL, for instance, utility class. And now we see that our text is already bigger. If we want to make it bold, we just type font extra bold, for instance, here. And now we see that we have our title already styled. Another thing that Tailwind can do for you is manage your breakpoints. So if you just do an LG prefix, we can increase the text size just on larger screens. So for instance, if we go here, we'll see that around the LG breakpoint, our title will get smaller and bigger. All right. Moving on. Our git next helper will traverse to the next commit, and we will stage the changes from the next commit. We will be adding some inputs and data here. So these components were all generated with ShadCN UI using the helper function, the utility function in CLI that I showed you earlier. So yeah, I cannot really showcase that now, but you can see the output for the input, output for the labels, and therefore a separator, which I decided to delete later, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, here is a very interesting thing which ShadCN UI actually uses, and that is the class variance authority. Do you guys know class variance authority? All right, yeah, perfect. So I will have a treat for you then later when I will be adding the submit button. This will be the nicely scoped within our component/UI directory, and we can simply import these. I will unstage the changes to see it in line as well. Good. We have just added the label. What's your name? With an input that uses values and non-change, and another field which would be the email. This is the default look. So Shadcn UI on the background uses mostly Radix UI component library, if you know it. And that means you can achieve a uniform styling similar to this just by simply using Radix UI, or like just by using Shadcn UI. And then you can build on top of this to achieve great things, hopefully within your branding as well. All right. The last thing that I wanted to showcase within this commit is the store, where we have added an interface for our form state, and we store it simply here in the feedback store. So our feedback form state is the state of the form itself, and the feedback store is the Zustand store, which will also handle state changes or loading parameters and similar. The great thing about Zustand is that it's enough for us to include our setters, our updaters, our actions, if you will, if you know Redux, for instance, directly where we store the state, which is very convenient because you can see with what are we actually working. How is this achieved? This update form function is that it's passed as the first argument into our creator function. So from wherever you call this setter, you will get a you can pass in a callback which will have the current state as the first argument, which is very convenient for updates because you don't need to first fetch it and then compare it to whatever you want to do. And then I have designed this to accommodate for any updates to the form state. So it takes a partial and just copies the rest of the state within our form object. And you can then use it within your components in the same way as you would use your state. So you just import the hook, which is the result of the creator function, and then you can call the update form state with your target values. This is for name, and this is for email. Now, I have not been optimizing for performance. This would cause the re-render of the whole form all the time. If you want to target more closely, you can also select the form.email, form.name, and then your components will not re-render if you don't update these properties. All right, on to the next one. If there are any questions, feel free to ask them. If not, we can then talk about it at the end of the presentation, but feel free to also interrupt me and provide your input. All right, so we go on to the next commit, where we will be adding a star rating component. So the star rating probably could be familiar for all of us. Basically, it's this easy star display. Now, how I created this component is I just typed into ChatGPT, create star rating component. So this is something that has kind of become available to us developers last year. And the code is not really nice, but it works, which is most of the time. You still need to know what you are doing. You need to understand it, because sometimes it will introduce such pesky bugs that you can then solve for more time as you would write the component yourself. So I would recommend for beginners to also still write your components alone and from the scratch, just so you get a feel for what actually works and what doesn't, because you will be saving you some time and increase your own value as a programmer. All right, what this component does, it just generates number of span elements that contain the glyph for a star, and depending on the total start props and on the current rating, it will choose the color of this glyph. Now, if you're using Tailwind CSS, you can still use inline styles like this. I have like a class name to increase the size of the stars, but I can still write my own colors in case I would want to. So it's not limiting in that way. Yeah, so this is how it would then look like. And yeah, we attach a on-click listener to the span element, which is a viable thing to do, works most of the time, which will then dispatch the onChange function on the feedback form. Now, we can update the rating in a very similar fashion as we have updated the name and email properties. The only thing for it which I had to do was to add the rating into my state. And basically my updater still works because it takes a partial of the state. All right, I think that would be it. One more interesting thing, and what's actually in the managing of the focus on React elements or like inform elements is, if you put a tab index property on an element, you make it available to access with your keyboard. The other thing that I've done is I'm listening for enter, but space would have been also a very good solution. Scroll. And we can do it by attaching the on key down capture on this field and just compare whether the keys enter, and then we will dispatch the same updater as before. All right, good. On to the next one. Yeah, so now what we want to do is we want to help the user by automatically focusing the name input after they have given us a rating. So if I now click on a star, I will automatically be focused in the next input. This is also great for mobiles because it also will draw your keyboard, so you know that immediately you can type. You don't have to like focus the input field now manually with a tap or with a click. And we have achieved this by adding these useRef or these ref objects to the component. Yeah, you then need to also attach the ref object to the input itself, and we can use React's ref property because we have a very nice and extensible input component. This is not the case if you have, if you've not done the forward refing of the input, which is a very pesky thing. Especially if you are using TypeScript and still want to get the nice auto-completion, you can then be caught into in some so-called type gymnastics, which I think most of us know who use TypeScript a lot. And afterwards, if we have the ref object, we can just take the current ref object and call the focus method. With TypeScript, we also see all the available methods. So if I do a nameRef.current, I can see all of the properties that actually this ref object provides. For instance, if we would want to programmatically blur it, we would be able to do that as well. Okay, moving on. Good. The next thing what I have done is I've extracted the form section because we have some layouting there, and yeah, I'll just stage this. Check this out. No, this one. So beforehand we had a margin for every single form section element, and we also yeah, had a label for it. Now it's nicely bound in the form section component, which receives the children, which is the real input. The label was reduced to just a string, so we can see that, yeah, we have three props, HTML4, which we just forward to the label, which is a string, and then the children. This is our simple form section. Now, why is this important? Is because I would want to make the forms a bit more dynamic according to the focus of it, which we will see next. Here we take a extra focused argument on the form section, and if the element is focused, we will attach the scaling by 25% for this whole section. And we are also using a helper, which is CN, short for class names. Because one thing that Tailwind introduced is when you are merging two class strings together, sometimes you would forget a space, and then the two classes which are on the sides of these strings will be merged, and then the style will not be applied. So basically, this helper just trims the strings and merges them together via Tailwind merge, but we don't have to go into that just yet. All right, the other thing which we have updated here is the focus state. So this would be how it looks like now after I have given a rating. The input would be transformed to scale 125%. So it's clear to the user like, oh yeah, now I have moved my focus here and this is what I'm looking at. How we have achieved this is by attaching an event listener, and yeah, I have a mistake here. You should remove the event listener, not to add it again in the unsubscribe. But you will know better when you will be doing your own. So we can attach the event listener focus in on the document, and if the target of this event is the same as the ref object, then we can set the focused attribute on this component here. Now we will be then passing on this property to our form section components, and this is what will achieve the proper scaling when we shift the focus of our components. If this is done in this way, it will also have the effect when we are not navigating with the mouse or with touch, but also with the tab. Yeah. So in the next commit, I have moved all of this logic onto the form section. So the great thing about the focus in and focus out events is that it propagates. So we can create a ref on the wrapper of this section. If I scroll down, you can see that I've attached the ref to the div, and then I attach the event listeners to the wrapper ref.current element. Now again, the same thing. You need to use remove event listener to not pollute the application with listeners. And basically it still works, right? And yeah, now it would also try to actually do something with the star rating. But all right, is there something else that we've done here? Yeah, this is the moving of this logic into the form section. Yeah, I removed just the text here. All right, that's fine. So, let's click pause. Move on. All right, and what we want to do now is focus by default our rating section. Because if the user comes, well, the most important thing and the most easy thing they want to do is the feedback on 1 to 5. That's easy. Most of the users will do it. Way less people will actually write their name and also emails to forms that they find online. And yeah, we do this by introducing, by adding refs to all of these span elements, to all of these stars that we have generated. So this is also a valid thing to do in React, is to just create the refs using the create ref helper, and we will just store the array of these created refs, which we will later assign to their respective span elements. Yeah, so I have also added this logic to focus the first or the biggest rating available, so that if someone arrives on the page and presses enter, they would automatically give it 5 stars.
Nice. Always the best.
So marketing got involved.
Yeah, always allow the users to do the thing that benefits you. Always. That has to be the easiest way. Easiest thing. All right, good. So we have seen the ref objects as array, and we can move on to the button. Okay, so we have added the button component using shed CNUI. So maybe to just show you guys how you can actually then work with it, is that all of these components are available here in this left menu, and if you click it, you can then see how you can add them simply to your code base. So in case I would want to use also something which still surprises me that it's not standardized to this day, like the calendar component, right? If you guys have ever done a calendar React component, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Then I can just take this, yeah, sure. Take this command, and bam, our calendar is now available for us to modify with some sensible defaults configured. I will not be doing that now, but all right. So one thing which I mentioned before is the class variance authority, because sometimes you want your elements to have different states according to the context in which they are. For instance, delete buttons. For instance, outline buttons, secondary buttons, and similar things. Now, what the class variance authority does is that you will define your default styles on top, and then give it an object where you would define where you would define the different types of variants which you have on your button. So this would be the variant property on the button, and this would be the size property on the button. And then just simply write your Tailwind classes in them so that you don't have to do some complex logic. And the best thing is that it does all of the type gymnastics for you, right? So it's done via this variant props helper where we just pass in type of button. So if we are in our feedback form, yeah, we can see the auto completion for I already have it, right? For the variant property, and I can now see that they are the ones defined with the class variance authority. Now the great thing about this is as well, I will just put whatever outline, and then we can see that it changes to the outline button. If I keep it on the default, then it updates according to the variant authority. The great thing about this is as well that you can extend it. So if I just want to have a variant that will be warning with, well, let's see, BG red 500. The problem is I'm losing my auto completion from the VS Code extension. So you can then hack it by writing it first into the class name property and copying it again into your variants. And with this, we have now a background red 500 from Tailwind on our button. And if I go to my feedback form again, I can see that it was added in the autocomplete of the button, which is truly amazing. And then it takes on the properties defined in Tailwind. All right, so do we have something else here? Yeah, I have added a simple validator for the form. I'm not using any library here, just to not add another one on this already maybe big stack for a meetup. But you can use, for instance, Zob. That's a great thing. And it works also well if you guys want to check out more of Shadsian greatness and documentation. There is a whole React hook form where you can define your form fields in such a manner and also define the validations on them using Zob and with the schema. But that's just for if you guys are interested in that sort of thing. For us, this is important because we will be submitting the form in the next step, and hopefully, I have not messed up something. All right. Good. The great thing again about Zustand is how simple it is to extend it with another action. So it doesn't care. It doesn't care. You just pass the second argument to the creator function, which is get. It will return the state which is currently in the store, and yeah, you simply can update the status. No problem. If you want, in 1 second, you can update it again. There is no issues with this was the state before or after. It just simply merges the states together in a very nice form. Within this submit form hook, yeah, we are also calling the validation to prevent further action if the user have not given their rating yet, as we can see here. And when you give a rating, then God love me some Mac. Then you can submit already your form. And now we have updated the state to pending, and then simply we are showing a thank you message within the feedback form, which is done with in this part of the code. So yeah, again, importing this action is via the selector function and the hook which was created easily, and the same thing for the status. Yeah, and this is everything. So thank you guys for listening. And if there are any questions,